Welcome, everyone, to the Modern Sage podcast. I'm Leah Guy, your host, and what an amazing day to be alive today. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for listening. I hope you get a lot of value from the show today. This podcast is a place where we inform and inspire everyone to live a life that they love. And there's so much information and wisdom about healing and wellness and mindfulness and following our dreams and our passions. And today's guest is a phenomenal addition to our series. Before we continue, just let me remind everyone, it is so helpful when you leave a rating or review for the podcast. It helps other people find this information or share it on social media. You can listen anywhere podcasts are played, and you can watch these on my YouTube channel. Follow me on social media at Leah Guy Live to see the promos, to see workshops and events that I'm hosting, and other inspirational information. All right, so today we're talking about a very popular topic. I think it's popular around the world by now, and that is Reiki. And today we have a master and an author in our presence, and I'm very excited to introduce him, Frans Stiene. Frans, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Really excited.
Yes. Frans's latest book is The Way of Reiki, and you have other publications out. We're going to learn a lot about you today and a lot about Reiki. I know some people see the word and they go, oh, I've had that, or, oh, I do that, or, you know, my friend does that. So there's a lot of pedestrian conversation about Reiki. And as I said, you are a master, not only a Reiki master, but a master, I don't know if you like the word guru, teacher in the field. And I'm honored to have you on the show. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah. And Frans is with us today from Amsterdam. So on the other side of the pond, as they say. So tell us a little bit about your last book is The Way of Reiki. Now you've written 2 other books on Reiki. What was the inspiration to produce this publication?
In a way, it was a little bit more a deepening of my own practice. So since 2012, been training with a Japanese priest in Japan in a very small monastery in the mountains, and he's very strict. And so since my other books, I've been really delving deeper and deeper into that healing. And during COVID, of course, you know, I had a lot of time because normally I teach around the world. I had a lot of time to contemplate, even practice more for myself. And I really wanted to share those insights. So I see actually that The Inner Heart of Reiki, my first own book, before that I co-written some books, but The Inner Heart of Reiki and then Reiki Inside and then now The Way of Reiki is really a continuation of the practice. Each time almost like peeling away another layer of the onion, so to say.
Yeah. Well, we're glad that you did. It's a beautiful book. I've read most of it, and I learned a lot. And I've been practicing and studying energy work in some form for many, many years. So I love the depth that you bring to it. And that's what I want to bring to this show and to our listeners today. For those people who either are Reiki practitioners themselves or want to experience what Reiki is, why don't you tell us in your words, what is Reiki?
Traditionally, the word Reiki actually meant your true self or your true nature, or my teacher would say Buddha nature. And it's your own inner essence. What is already that unification of non-duality, emptiness, I am the universe is me. Of course, those are really easy words we can quickly say, but actually to embody that, that is the whole trick in a way. So the system of Reiki has very specific practices like meditation, precepts, symbols and mantras, something what is called Reiju, and very specific meditation practices. And when we practice the system of Reiki on a regular basis, not just hands-on healing, but actually a lot of the other elements within it, then slowly we lay bare our true nature. And that really is Reiki. That is really realizing that we are Reiki. And no matter what word we use, if we use it word Reiki or God essence or Buddha nature, ultimately they're just words to describe something what in essence we cannot describe.
Mm. Well, for those listening who have never had Reiki, I would love to hear from you what a person could experience. But I'd like to say first what my experience was or has been just to kind of open the door for people who maybe have never opened this door at all. On the surface, it is hands-on healing, as you say, and it would be much like going to get a massage, but you stay clothed and you're on a table, and people and the Reiki practitioner or master is near you. You'll often see a Reiki practitioner doing hand symbols in the air before they get started. Some of them touch you and some of them don't touch you. And it feels like a very relaxing, hands-on, very gentle touch or non-touch experience where the person on the table can feel, relaxed, restored, balanced, etc. Now, I want to say from my perspective that I believe Reiki in its essence, obviously, is a wonderful, beautiful tool. And so I've never really had, quote, bad Reiki, but I've had bad Reiki experiences and I've had amazing Reiki experiences. And I've been utilizing Reiki for probably 10, 15 years or so. And it's phenomenal to notice the difference of the practitioners and the effect. And it's so widespread now, and it's become so popular that I love to recommend Reiki to people, but I'm cautious to do so because I don't want them to have some of the lesser experiences that I've had. I'm trying to say this
Kindly.
kindly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So having said all of that, Reiki is Reiki, and the practitioner is important, and the practitioner's depth and connection to their true self is important in their practice.
Absolutely.
What makes it all so different? Why don't we start there? What makes it different from getting a okay Reiki session to a phenomenal Reiki session?
I think there's many different layers to that. And for example, when I moved back, I lived in Australia for a long time. And when I moved back to Holland and I was looking for an acupuncturist here, I went to this one acupuncture guy and he was just sticking every week the needles in the same spot without feeling the pulse. It was just like conveyor belt acupuncture, so we can see it's not only in the system of Reiki, but an acupuncture or a massage, or these days, even people learn how to be a yoga teacher through the internet, the same with Reiki. And so we have to be very careful in that. So that's one layer. Then the next layer is the practitioner or teacher, their own direct experience, not just thinking about it, oh, I am the universe is me, but really having that direct experience, not just once, but many, many, many times. And so then the treatment, of course, becomes quite different. And then another element is that we always have to look at the practitioner or the teacher and the client-student relationship. How safe do I feel with my client, and how does the client feel safe with me? For example, the other day, I met this girl randomly in a little cafe. She actually came from Germany. She was here. She didn't even know exactly why she turned up in this cafe in Haarlem, where I live close to Amsterdam. And she just spoke to me very briefly. And I said, well, I teach Reiki. She said, oh, it was one. I said, well, we can do one now. And she walked with me home. No questions asked. I could be a mass murderer. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was no questions asked. I put down the table. She lay down. She had this most amazing experience. But for her, she was just so ripe and ready. She trusted me. I trusted her. And therefore, that unification could take place almost instantaneously. And therefore, sometimes it also takes time to have that trust between both parties when we do hands-on healing.
Yeah, those are all excellent points. Yes. So what could a person expect when they get a Reiki session? What brings people to the table?
A lot of people these days, stress, depression, cancer, illnesses. Some people just want to relax. So it's also when we go for a healing, and I don't really see this only within the system of Reiki, but also acupuncture or massage, what is my own intention as a client? What do I bring? So, for example, say I come and I say, I just want to heal my knee, then that is a very small, basic idea of healing. If I come and say, I want to be enlightened, for example, then I'm already more open. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So it also depends on what you as a client, what your intention and your motivation is for healing. Do we only see it for relaxation, or do we say, well, actually, I want to live a life without anger, without worry, being grateful, being true to my way of my being, and being compassionate, just to name a few things? Or do I just see a physical healing and then I go my way and I'm still being a bastard?
Yeah, there is a lot of importance in the intention for sure.
Yeah.
I in some of my best sessions with people whom I trust and so forth, I will say, well, let me back up and say I first went to energy work as a victim of abuse, sexual abuse, and I was traumatized. And so getting massage, doing rolfing or acupuncture or anything was too much for me. And so I discovered energy healing as a way in, as a
Yeah.
accessible, safe way of therapy for myself. And even still, when I receive Reiki now, it sends me into a very deep hypnotic, trance-like state that is probably the most um restful times I have, and I just love it and cherish it, and it's beautiful. So what other things can people expect to feel or receive
Well,
when they're on the
I
table?
think what you say is really interesting. Many years ago, twice I did this actually. I was hooked up on computers and my client was hooked up on computers. And what they could really read was this very deep yoga nidra state without falling asleep. So actually really conscious. And when we can really walk together as the client and the practitioner in this yoga nidra state, for example, that really deep healing space, then many things can happen. We actually might be able to release certain patterns. We might release certain physical issues. It's very difficult to say this and this will happen because so many different elements at play, like for example, if I do a session today, what is my state of mind today? Energy follows the mind. So then what is the client's state of mind and readiness and openness? Then what is our interconnection together? But yeah, physical healing, emotional, spiritual, energetic. I always try as much as possible to steer, maybe not always in the first session, but steer clients into really spiritual healing. Why? Because when my mind becomes very open and I realize this deep interconnectedness with what all that is, then automatically my physical body will react. It's not that my energy, my mind, and body are three separate unities. This is
Right.
how we often see healing in a lot of modern practices, but they're interlinked with each other. And therefore, the more I relax my mind, the more open-minded I will be, the less angry and worried, the less tense physically. So therefore, I can relax, and therefore my energy will flow more. I start to feel happier. Mentally, I start to feel physically happier in my body, less pain, discomfort, etc., etc.
Yeah, there's so many wonderful, beautiful benefits. Just
Mm.
talking about energy in general, I mean, I kind of see the world energetically, so I live in that realm of energy as everything and how one thing affects the other. But even in a very basic way, in the Reiki system and the Buddhist system and yogic system and so forth, there's, um, I would say, a consistent definition of energy. Would you like to share that with us?
Um, yeah, I mean, ultimately, we can say everything is energy, but again, there is a difference between intellectually saying it and really
Yes.
physically energetically and in your mind state experience it. So for example, if I go to my teacher in Japan, who's a priest, and his own teacher was this very high priest in Japan. Everybody knew this man. He was kind of the Dalai Lama of Japan. And so if I go there and I say, oh, sensei, I really feel so much calm. I feel my energy flowing. And he says, yeah, that's all good and well. But then he's going to test it on me, right? And he's going to push my buttons to see if I do get angry, if I do get worried, how I react. We as modern teachers, we don't do this anymore. And so therefore, sometimes our direct experience stays a little bit surface. And then when we do get pushed, and this is why it's so important when we do practice the system of Reiki, of other modalities, to look, for example, okay, can we see energy? Fine, it's great. But sometimes when we start to see energy or we look for it, that can also backfire. And what I mean by that, then we say, oh, look what I can do. Then it becomes a little bit egocentric. I can see energy and you can't. And so therefore, within the system of Reiki, we have one wonderful tool that's called the precepts there in the Japanese behind me. And they're like, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be true to your way and your being, and show compassion to yourself and others. And ultimately, that is the peace within you. And if I have that peace within me, then I can emanate that peace in a way. And then I'm very more peaceful to other people. And then we can create a peaceful society, a peaceful world. And therefore, like, for example, my teacher might say, oh, you talk about energy or maybe seeing or sensing, etc. But then he says, are we compassionate? Are we kind? How are you feeling today? Do you feel that anger? Do you feel that worry? Do you hold on to the worry? Do you hold on to the anger? And I might say yes or no. And then he's actually going to test me by putting me through trial and error in a way and see how I react.
So as kind of a inquiry about emotional states and being human, aren't we all, though, set up to experience levels of anger or disappointment or worry, not to stay attached to them, but to experience them?
I mean, the first thing is, I hear this a lot, say, yeah, but we are human. And it's okay, well, ask yourself, where does the word human comes from? The word human originally comes from the word humane. It's an old French word. And if we look at the word humane, it means being kind, compassionate, etc. It doesn't say angry or worry. So the quality of a real human being, and we can see this in a tiny little baby who hasn't been programmed into all sorts of things, that this baby is just being kind and loving, no judgment.
That's their natural state.
And that's a natural state. So if we say anger is the natural state or worry is the natural state, that should then mean that we are 24 hours a day angry, right? Or 24 hours a day worried, but that is not the case. So anger is not really a natural state. It's a condition, and we can let go of that. So of course we still feel these emotions, but how can we learn in our daily life not to touch these emotions? I'm not saying push them away, because when we push them away, we will explode. But this wonderful Zen master, Sunryu Suzuki, has a wonderful, very simple metaphor what everybody could understand, and is leave your front door open, leave your back door open. And when these thoughts come in, anger, worry, attachment, even attachment to happiness, let them go from the front door, let them go out through the back door, but in the middle, don't serve them tea. And this is what we normally do, right? We feel a thought come up, and we label this thought anger, and then we hold on to it, and then we stay angry for a week, for a year, for the rest of our life. And that in itself is, of course, not very healthy. And this is how we get very sick emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah. A lot of people are serving tea.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that visual. We're having all day lifelong tea parties.
That's it. Yeah.
So what took you to Reiki? Who were you before you discovered Reiki?
I was a party animal.
Are you? Are you?
Yeah, actually, when I lived in Australia for 20 years and I was born here in Holland. And when I came back, I met up with a friend who now works for a newspaper. And he said, Frans, we should do an interview. So he did his interview with me. And then when it appeared, I didn't know. When it appeared in the newspaper, the title was From Party Animal to Reiki Master. So that's quite cute. Yeah, I wasn't really into all of these. I was just really enjoying life, partying and partying pretty hard. So when I was about 30, I felt partied out emotionally, mentally, and physically. I had a lot of physical problem with my back already from when I was 16. And that, yeah, also started to manifest emotionally. So I wasn't really feeling in good state. And so I remember actually at that time, I was in India, in the Himalayas. In the end, I lived there for 2 years. And I was laying there in bed during the day because I had problems with my back. I couldn't really walk that day. I felt really confused in my head. And I remember like saying to myself, now I really need to do something for myself. I need to help myself because else it's not going to go so good. And so from that day on, actually, I start to make a very conscious decision. How can I help myself? What can I do? Stop drinking, uh, eating better food, doing exercises, meditation practices, etc., etc. So I'm now, I will be 57 this year, and I feel fitter than I've ever been, physically, mentally, spiritually. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, let me ask, what were you doing in India when you came to that revelation?
Um, First of all, I had a few healings by local shamans. And then I started to buy, first I started to buy some books. I had a very intense Ayurvedic treatment for 2 weeks. It was kind of 1 week, really intense, and then you have to rest for a week. So then we also started to do a Reiki class in Nepal, Kathmandu, Reiki 1, 2, and 3. And we opened a Reiki center in Darjeeling in India to actually just do volunteer work on a local community. So we taught them how to do hands-on healing on their family. One of the tea plantations, they even set up a little Reiki center for other people working there. And we went out a few times a week to people in need, and they had no idea what Reiki was. But the wonderful thing there is that healing there at that time was so normal. They wouldn't ask any questions. They would just, oh, you're coming to do a healing. We don't know you. We don't know what the system of Reiki is, but yeah, go ahead. You do whatever you need to do because you're here to help me. And like, if I say this now to people here in my local neighborhood, oh, do you want me to do a treatment? And they go, yeah, but what is it? What am I going to feel? Do you believe this? Do you believe that? What is your, an hour later, you still haven't done a
Never
treatment.
mind.
That's it. And then they have to think, let me think about it. And then 2 weeks later say, what was it again?
Oh,
Well, and there they were just so no question. Just, yeah, go ahead.
wow. I wish I was your neighbor, Franz. I'd be
Actually,
knocking on your door every day.
I have this neighbor, she's 77, and she's so cute. And then she texts me, she said, Frans, would you like to come for coffee? And then I go for coffee, and I know. And then she goes, within traditionally in the Japanese system of Reiki, there's also chanting. And then she goes, Frans, can you do some chanting for me? And then she lays on the sofa, and then she's there, and then I chant for half an hour or something. And she goes, oh, that feels so good. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's cute. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've really spread the education and the mission and the essence and purpose of Reiki far and wide. I know that you have. So
Yeah.
back in your party days, I'm not going to let you off the hook this fast. Back in your party days, or before you started the Reiki clinic and began studying yourself, what did you do for a living?
I started working when I was 17 and a half years old. I didn't like school. It was not my thing. I was a little bit the class clown. I'm now the Reiki clown, so that's okay. It doesn't matter. Um, and so I started to work in a very small, actually, it was first my boss and me. And we were selling machines to bind books, book binding machines, staplers, folding machines, etc., as a wholesale. And I worked for him for 3 years and then I quit and I went to Australia backpacking. And then when I came back after a year, he was at the airport and I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I heard that you were coming back and I'm going to pick you up. And do you want to work on Monday?" So I said, "That's fine."
Wow.
So I must say, I've never wrote a CV. I would have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, I think, a beautiful testimony to when you're in the flow and, finding your life instead of trying to force it and push. So then who introduced you to Reiki?
It was actually a book. Yeah.
Oh, book.
I
Okay.
read a few books, and when I was in India, I had a very interesting experience in Ladakh by a female shaman or healer, and that really, for me, triggered it all to really look at, yeah, deep within myself. What really did I experience, and how, and if possible, could I facilitate this for other people?
Yeah. Wow. And now look at you.
Yeah, that's it. I teach worldwide, as you say. It's I won't even say it's my job because I I don't really see it as a job. For me, it's my life. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, speaking of that, what is your belief or feeling about um, the financial part of it? This is kind of, healer to healer talk because I ultimately want to do my work for free. And yet you know, have a house and
Yeah.
animals. So how do you feel about, do you split contribution or teaching?
I think it's an interesting concept. I actually had this conversation the other day. I met this lovely woman the other day. We walked on the beach and she is just starting off with healing. And she asked me almost exactly the same question. And I say, like, of course, ultimately, I would like to do it for free. But as you say, we need a house. If I don't have a house, I need to go to my teacher in Japan. Training also costs money. If I teach, for example, in different countries, I need a plane, I need hotel accommodation, I need food. At the same time, I still need to pay my rent here. So all of these things we also have to calculate. So, for example, my teacher in Japan, he lives in a little temple, what is supported by the local community, so he can live there for free. When they come and knock at the door, he doesn't charge anything, but they leave donations, right? So they leave an envelope. Some people just some fruit, but some people, they are quite wealthy. They live a very big paycheck, so to say.
Yeah.
And that's how traditionally it was, but we don't have that anymore, right? In our society, traditionally the shaman was supported by the local community because the shaman made sure that the local community stayed healthy. So of course they wanted to support it, but now we don't have that infrastructure anymore like that. So yes, we do need to charge. Then of course it depends also, what do we want to charge? And that is another thing. That depends on many people. Of course, sometimes I see Reiki classes, they're like at 10,000 euro. And then I go like, I don't really want to charge that. And then I do have people, for example, at the moment, I'm doing a 21 online chanting event. And there were a few people that said, "Oh, I would love to come, but I can't do it this month." And so then I emailed back and I said, "Well, did you say that because maybe you're busy or another reason?" And a few said, "Well, actually, it's financially." I said, "No, don't worry, don't pay. Other people are paying, so I can substitute that."
Mhm.
So I think it's giving and taking at that for practitioners. Yeah.
Yes,
Or,
I agree.
yeah.
It's a little difficult to figure out what that is for each person, but I'm seeing, I'm seeing now in this generation, the people that are coming up and they're going through the quick schools and their trainings or whatever, and then they're coming out and charging an enormous amount of money, and I'm like, what's going on here? I've been doing my work for 25, 30 years and I don't feel like I should charge that,
Yeah.
So there's certainly a different business element to it that has come around. And, no judgment. It's just interesting to observe.
I think also for me, actually, I got an email from someone the other day and said, "Oh, Frans, I want to do Reiki 1, 2, and 3. Would you?" And I said, "Well, can you tell me your motivation?" Because some people, they say, "Oh, I'm going to do Reiki 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to teach. I'm going to do this as a job to make money." And for me, that had never been my motivation. My motivation, first of all, was helping myself. That was always been my motivation. It still is my motivation, because I always feel we can always go deeper. I still do get angry sometimes or worried. And so therefore, I need to keep practicing. I need to check in with my teacher. So that's my motivation. And then the second motivation is that I want to help people. And then that I got paid for it, that is a byproduct. Of course, now people might say, "Oh, yeah, that's a great byproduct. You are doing well." Yes, I do well. But my motivation has never been, I'm going to set this up to make money. So always my motivation was first for myself. I want to heal myself. And through that, I think there's a wonderful teaching in Japanese Buddhism. Let me have a look. Within work and food and earning money, there is no enlightenment. But within enlightenment, there is food, money, etc.
Yeah.
So I think so. Therefore, I always say to some people, what is your motivation that you want to set up a business? And check it for yourself.
It's so beautifully said. Thank you for saying that. I remember for myself personally, and this was probably just, I don't know, a decade or more, a little more ago, when I was worried about money, and being self-employed and living in Manhattan area. It's like, I have to pay the rent here,
Yeah.
And I remember almost specifically, but it wasn't that specific, feeling kind of what you're describing. Like I did a self check-in about why am I doing what I'm doing? And when I aligned fully with that purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing, which is to help other people and to, inspire others, help others heal, understand themselves, and to keep myself on a path, I almost heard this voice inside of my head that said, you don't ever need to worry about money again.
Yeah.
And of course, sure, there's still times where I, calculate all the money and make sure I have what I need. But when I keep that intention set and I remember that, then I don't worry about money. And also when I recognize in my work with clients, if I'm feeling like too strung out or like my motivation isn't exactly on par, if my focus is somewhere else, I reduce my clients so that I can put my energy and focus where I want to and keep the integrity and my intention. And even still, no problem with money flow. So I think that that's a really important thing for all of us to think about, even if you're not a healer, even whatever.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, also even now, for example, so there's periods where I travel a lot or periods where I'm more here in Holland. So normally December, January, I'm often in Holland. And then I do my daily walk, and I actually do quite a lot of treatments for free. And people just say, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. It's fine." And other people, I ask for money, and that's okay too. Or the other day I had an exchange, some coffee and cake, and and that is also fine.
Yeah.
So it always doesn't have to be financial. And I think also a while ago, I was approached by someone who I didn't know and who is a teacher and said, well, Frans, I have 2 clients coming for my Reiki 1 class, and I think I'm going to cancel it because I only have 2 clients. And I asked this person, I said, why are you going to cancel it? And they said, well, I only have 2 clients. I said, no, that's not what I want to hear. Think deeper. And they didn't really in the beginning get what I was trying to ask, really. And I didn't want to ask it directly because I think it's much better if it comes from themselves. And finally, this person said, oh, yes, I think what you're trying to say is that I'm canceling it because I'm not making money and I'm just breaking even, or maybe I need to put money on top of the rent of the venue. And I said, aha, now we come somewhere. And I said, so now I'm asking you, are you teaching to make money, or are you teaching because you enjoy teaching? And every business has gains and losses. So now think about that. And then a few days later, this person wrote back and said, I didn't cancel the class. I'm still going ahead with it. I said, wonderful. And because we also have these things, I think if we set ourselves up as a teacher, there's also a certain responsibility. And I think this is sometimes what new or even existing teachers forget. There is a certain responsibility that we stay in touch with our students, that we give them support. Also that when we book a class and we might find there's not enough people to make it work financially, that maybe would say, yes, we're still going to do it.
Yes. Well, in that light, and also in the light of Reiki and knowing our true self, I think between that, or maybe we call that part of ego that pops up, or the fear that pops up, on what we're doing and who we are. Just last night, I was thinking about how frequently, and one time in particular, I got really upset because I had done a particular project for this really big company and they paid me okay, but they made a huge amount of money, like huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And I was so worked up with that, for days and weeks. I was calling everybody, can you believe this? What do I do? I feel so unjustified and this isn't fair. And I was so worked up about it. But then again, I come back to that part of myself and go, am I money driven here? Is that what I'm doing here in this incarnation of my life? Am I here just to make money? Because if that's the truth, then there's a lot of other ways I could go
Absolutely.
and make money, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what am I doing here? And when I get back to that true self and recognize it's not really about the money is kind of more feeding the ego, or, whatever it's doing for us, then it's so much easier to just keep saying yes, keep showing up, keep staying committed to the things that we say we're going to, and deliver to people what can be of need and essence. I mean, writing books, sometimes you make good money and sometimes you don't make any money. It's like a brochure, and people think,
absolutely. Yeah.
people
I
think,
was speaking, I was speaking to someone the other day who was an author and said, geez, man, I didn't sell any fucking books. Excuse me, language. I said, wow, it's how are you going? I said, well, sometimes it's not, in particular, the system of Reiki is not a huge market. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
But the book itself has an energy, and that energy you have delivered out into the world. And whether people ever read it or not, that energy affects people. And I believe because of that good work, then people come around to you and it all flows,
Oh, absolutely.
It all feeds and flows. There's a nurturing there. So,
and I think this is why, I like that word always. We can say be in the flow, or I would even say I am the flow, when we really can flow with life and actually anything. I had a fantastic, strange, bizarre day on Saturday just because I just went to flow with different people. I ended up here, there, in different places where I would normally don't come. And I had this very interesting, wild day. And so, but sometimes people say, did you just went with that person, or did you just do this? And I go like, weren't you afraid or worried, or who is this person, or what, like this?
yeah.
But then we become very tight. And then, of course, we get worried. And then that has an effect on my body, has an effect on my energy, and that has an effect on my mind. And then one day, I feel like not interacting with people at all. And then I start to feel lonely. And then I wonder why I'm lonely. But because ultimately, we don't go with the flow.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I've got this image of you now around the streets of Amsterdam. You meet this girl in the coffee shop. You do,
It
you
is a bit like that, actually.
walk into this free place. You're taking a walk on the beach with this one. You're over at the 77-year-olds having coffee and crumpets and doing Reiki.
It is a little bit like that too. You had a good insight in me. That's true. Yeah. But
But
I
that's,
like that.
yeah, it's beautiful. And you're doing
Yeah.
your thing and you're being you and you're
Yeah.
sharing your essence and your gift with others and receiving from others. And that's perfect.
Yes. And in that way, like, for example, we don't have to do hands-on healing.
Mm,
Like with some friends I know, they don't necessarily want hands-on healing or Reiki, maybe their cultural background, or it's not that thing. And yet, when they come here for a coffee or we go for a walk, they say after, I don't know, I always feel good when I do things with you, and oh, that's great. See you later.
yeah.
But it is when we're in this luminosity and we feel this deep interconnectedness with someone and this openness and this loving and kindness, that in itself is already a very profound healing space, because often we don't get that, often people make judgments, are not very open, they don't listen, there is no interaction, or we sit in, with these telephones. And so if we can give the person already intention and attention, then automatically healing already starts to take place without even the need maybe to use our hands.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, you have studied with some amazing people, and tell us, for those who are interested in Reiki, there's a couple of different lineages. Is that the right
Yeah.
way to say it? So tell
Yeah.
us the one that you study with and how you deepen your practice every day since you've been studying.
Yeah, I started with a very modern kind of Reiki tradition, and then I wanted to know more. So in 2001, I went to Japan and trained with a few Japanese Reiki teachers since then. And even then, I was still not really happy what I was finding, what I wanted for myself. I wanted a much more dedicated spiritual practice, because yeah, for me, again, it's all good and well to say it's a spiritual practice and we do some hands-on healing and we fall asleep and the next day we're still bastards. So finally, I trained for 12 years with a Taoist teacher. So he was brought up in a Chinese community since the age of 3 in healing and self-empowerment. So I trained with her for 12 years. That was fantastic. Unfortunately, she passed away, but
Mm.
and then 2012, I started to train with this priest. And he is one of those wonderful, eccentric mountain priests in Japan who practice probably himself for 5-6 hours a day. So when he is doing some chanting, it's like a sword is just cutting straight through all the rubbish, all the bullshit.
Mm.
So it's not easy training, and he's very tough and direct, and at the same time very kind and compassionate. So I'm going again this year to see him, and I'm not necessarily looking forward to it because it's a bit like they can be very confrontational, but at the same time I like it because afterwards and during it, I feel these really big shifts within my own mind, body, energy. And so I will say, okay, I put myself through it so that then I can be a better teacher, practitioner for other people, and again, that is really my motivation.
That's quite a dedication. You have spent a lot of time and energy and heart with this.
Yeah, yeah, for me, it's a life. Yeah. I must say it's a calling in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think personally? What do you think about all of the mass amounts of teacher trainer programs that are out there now?
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful and sincere about it. These days there's a lot of internet training. Wonderful, don't get me wrong, everybody. Wonderful. Yet, some people say, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, if it doesn't matter, then it shouldn't matter if I say, hey, Leah, I give you a hug like this. And then you should feel the same quality when we do it in person. Of course, when we do it in person, it's very, very different, right?
Yes.
There's no doubt about it, right? So also, for example, when we teach online, most of the time we only see our client's head. We don't see what the rest of the body is doing. We can't adjust the posture. We can't instruct them in many different levels. So it's not just energetically, it's also physically and verbally how we teach.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, yeah, for me, teaching in person is still the most important element. And this is why currently I don't teach Reiki 1, 2, or 3 online. I do support for students online. That is, I've been doing this for way before COVID. I think 10 years ago, we already created a whole video platform within our website to do this, because I've always believed in support for people who come and do the classes, after support and after care. So, but yeah, to really work with someone in person is way more profound. And I think also these days we very quickly tick these boxes.
Yes.
But it's the same, I can go and have a hamburger, or I can go have a really healthy, very wonderful prepared meal, and we definitely feel the difference between a greasy hamburger. Of course, nice sometimes maybe to have a greasy meal, but if you eat that all the time,
Yeah.
you might need to go to the doctor and have a health checkup. But if you keep eating healthy, then that's something very different.
Yeah. Well, I asked partly because it seems that that there's how do I say it? Not a conveyor belt. What do you call it when
Well, I think I agree. Yeah,
okay?
I would say a
And like
conveyor belt.
everybody's teaching Reiki now,
Yeah,
not even just being
yeah,
Reiki, they're teaching Reiki.
yeah.
They're all masters. So is it okay for everyone or anyone to teach? I mean, I guess it's
Um,
okay, but
well, you only have to look on forums that, when I sometimes, hi, I'm a Reiki teacher. I have a lot of fear and this and this. And I go, what, and you're teaching? Or what? I read this certain questions and I go, and you're teaching and you're asking this question? You should know this question if you're teaching.
mm,
If, because you asked this teaching, you're actually saying, I'm a shit teacher. Don't get me wrong. But, why is that famous saying where the blind are leading the blind, and this is why over time within the system of Reiki we have this wonderful tool, the precepts. And this is easy and yet at the same time very difficult, because we can kid ourselves as well, that can we honestly look in the mirror and say, after some years of practice, do I feel less angry? Do I feel less worried? Am I more grateful? Am I more true to my way of my being? And am I more compassionate? And a compassion what doesn't change according to circumstances. Then is not a difficult to test, and yet it's very difficult because we like to fool ourselves. Yeah, no, I'm really kind, I'm really compassionate, I have no anger, and then next moment we really pissed off with someone. And this is why these traditional teachers, like my teacher in Japan, they say, oh, you're saying this, well, let me test. Let me push these buttons and see if you get angry with me, or if you get worried, or if you get fearful, or are you compassionate? We go into the street and he looks at me to see how I react in circumstances.
wow.
So, for me, it's all good and well to call ourselves a teacher, but is it just a title, or are you embodying it? And so for me now, I always say there's teachers and there are teachers,
Yeah.
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 And if we really want to study something, don't go for the teachers, go for the teacher, check with them. Yeah.
Have you ever turned to your teacher and just ripped him a new one or anything? Just like went off on him? Like just
I
a
was
moment of,
one of the first times I went there, and what they do, they send you to your room to practice. And the way he did it, man, and then I was sitting in my room and I go like, shit, you're not my fucking dad. Like, I was like,
yeah.
really could feel these dad issues coming up. Like, wow, where is this coming from? And then, he does all these kind of really, sometimes very subtle, sometimes very in your face. And it's very fascinating then to watch myself react or not react and go like, oh, I could improve on this, or yes.
I had a healing center in Jersey City for years.
Yeah.
And, we played beautiful music, and I love the music. I mean, I love the singing bowls. And I got on a kick of playing Indian flute music for quite a while.
Yeah.
It's very soothing. I mean, I just love it. But there was this one day, it was a rough work day, and I'd been there for like 12 hours, and that flute music was going all day. And at the end, I had a meditation or something at the end, everybody left. And I went over there and I said, fuck the flute music. And I just had to turn it off,
Yeah.
but it doesn't linger most of the time. So,
No, I mean, this is the thing. Is it lingering or not lingering?
yes.
This
Yeah.
is, are we clinging to these emotions and feelings, or are we not clinging? That's the thoughts. We cannot stop thinking, we always will have thoughts, but the issue is, are we clinging or is it lingering? Yes or no? And then can we do something about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell us the most effective or the most change that you've had directly from your experience with Reiki, if you can sum it up.
First of all, there's a couple of different things actually. I feel first emotionally more stable.
Mhm.
I feel a much more inner happiness, so not uh, happiness what comes from chocolate or something outside, but within myself. And then also physically, because as a kid from 16 to 30, I suffered from chronic back problems, what would then pull my sciatic nerves through my legs. And some days I walk like an old man, and they would say, Frans, one doctor once said, Frans, you might, when you're in your 50s, maybe be in a wheelchair because that's not going to go well. We can't do anything about it. So I haven't had any back problem now for over 15 years. So,
Wow.
that is one major element. So yes, I feel more content, and there is most people know it from yoga, but again, a certain inner bliss within myself. What it's now very easy to facilitate without almost any ritualistic paraphernalia or thing, where I can just say, okay, take a couple of deep breaths, and there it is. Doesn't always happen. It's not 24 hours a day yet. So that's what I'm working at. But again, we should not become attached to this inner bliss either. So there's definitely, I've been very fortunate, I think, to have met some real teachers. And when I work with them and see them and they work with me, I go, man, I'm just scratching the surface, and for me, that really helps me as a drive to want to explore more.
Yeah. Wow, you're a walking testament to the power of healing. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for all those listening, Franz's latest book is The Way of Reiki. If you're interested in learning Reiki, if you are a Reiki practitioner, if you're interested in receiving Reiki, I highly recommend it. And as we all say, as the author myself, if you purchase his book, leave them a review. It helps so much.
Absolutely.
Yes, it helps so much. So that's a kind thing that you can do for people like Frans and myself, and just be mindful of that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your writings. I'm so happy to have you on the show, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me and thank you for talking. Wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, we will see you next week on the Modern Sage podcast. Have a great day.